Okay, let's go ahead and get started this morning. So, welcome and good morning. Welcome to this, I guess it's Monday morning. Probably like a lot of you, I'm losing track of what day of the week it is, but I do know that today is our eighth installment of live streaming. So, thank you for joining me again today. If you are joining in live, please make sure that you pop into the comments and just say hi. That way we kind of know who's there. And if you want to mention where you're from, that's awesome too. You don't have to, but anyway, well, welcome. And like I said, this is our eighth installment. And today I want to focus on using some images. I haven't really talked too much about using images yet. We've done lots of techniques with different materials. And did a little bit of collaging with things, but not a whole lot. So I kind of want to get into using images, but not just collaging. So we're going to focus today on some image transfers and some tracing. So now I know a lot of people kind of feel like tracing is cheating. And I just remember, growing up and, in art class, you don't trace. But it all depends on what your purpose is. So if I'm trying to draw something very realistically and I want to render it just by looking at it, then yeah, I don't want to trace it. But for our journal, tracing is a viable technique for including images, especially images that are not copyrighted or ones that we've taken ourselves. So if they're our own images, there's no issue with copyright, so we can trace anything that we want. And also by tracing an image, we are changing it, so it's less likely to run afoul of all the copyright laws, if that's something that you're worried about, especially if you're a teacher and you're teaching your students. But tracing is actually an awesome way to add images to our journal. Whether it's stencils or in this case we're going to use something else. So let me go ahead and switch over and show you what materials we are going to need today. So I've got my journal, of course. So if you're just joining in for one of the first times, this is a Stillman and Byrne journal, and it has some nice thick mixed media paper. Somebody did raise a question before about like the pages buckling, and even this mixed media paper, I don't know if you can see this page especially, is a little bit wavy, and that's just normal. The thicker the paper, the less it's going to buckle and have an issue. So anyway, so you're going to need your journal. I'm going to set that aside because I'm not going to need it quite yet. I've got some other stuff here, so let me kind of gather. I'm going to be doing some trimming, so I've got my scissors. Going to be doing some gluing, so I've got my Oohoo glue stick. Okay. For the tracing, I'm going to need some tracing paper, so I've got my pad of tracing paper here, so I'll use that. I'm going to need something to trace, so I have lots of images, and all of these images are photocopies, and some of them are standard ones I use a lot. So like this brain is just some generic brain that I found and photocopied it, and I use it a lot. Selfies that I've printed out and made photocopies of, and then some symbols and some other things in here. So I've got a whole bunch of different photocopied images, and they're going to be good for both the tracing and for the image transfers. Now for the image transfers, I'm going to use packing tape. I like to buy it on this little dispenser, just because I can take it off the dispenser. Oops, it's kind of stuck. And now I have a little roll of tape that I can take pretty much anywhere. If you just have a big roll of tape, awesome, that works. It doesn't have to be like the crystal clear, like the real heavy duty kind. Any kind of packing tape works, and some of my high school students found that even the invisible, like the Scotch tape and the transparent tapes, work as well. So going to need some packing tape, going to need something to rub down with pretty hard, so I like to use a wooden spoon, but a bone folder would work, a metal spoon. With one of the techniques, we don't want to use plastic, so a wooden spoon is pretty good. For the other technique, we're going to need some solvent, and what we found is that the chart pack ad markers, the blender marker, is really good for transferring photocopies, and but it has to be the blender pen, and it's just basically a clear pen, and it has to be the chart pack. Prismacolor, I don't know if Copic has one, but they don't work because the blender pen has this chemical in it. If you don't have these, and they're kind of expensive, they're $3 to $4 a piece, and they don't last very long. There's a common household cleaner that you might have, and this is Goof Off, and it says the ultimate remover. And if I turn over to the list of all of the warnings, you do want to be careful whether you're using the Goof Off or the blender marker. They both contain xylene or toluene. I think I'm saying that right. And both of those are kind of harmful. And so make sure that you're in a well-ventilated area. You might even want to go outside to use that. So this works great. The nice thing is that this can is very inexpensive, and then it lasts you forever. And of course, you have a cleaner that you can use around your house. It melts plastic, so be aware of that. I've got pens as well. I've got some glue paper, some scrap paper that I have here, and because it's going to be cutting and gluing. So anyway, let's kind of get into the stenciling, or not the stenciling, the tracing. Let me get rid of my journal, get that out of the way. I also have a piece of plexiglass down. And you can kind of see the edge here. If I move it up too far, then it will kind of just show the lights, and I don't like that. So I'm going to work on here whenever I do the tape transfers, because it's going to keep my table cleaner. So let's talk about tracing. So I've got my tracing paper, I've got a pen, and you can tear out the tracing paper if you want, or you can leave it in. If you have an image, and I like nice black, nice high contrast black and white images for this, you can just slide it under. What's nice is if you leave it in the pad and you kind of push it in, it stays where you want it to, and it's easier to work with. If you do take it out, you can take a little piece of tape and tape the image on it. So any kind of image works. So I'm going to start off with this brain. And what's nice is that, hey, this is black. So if I just wanted a black image, I could just glue the image down as a collage. So the nice thing with tracing is we can mix up. I can use my blue pen here, or I've got a pink pen over here. Actually, maybe I'll go ahead and start using pink. So this is a Faber-Castell Pitt Artist Pen, and it's waterproof, so I can use it. And it's just tracing. So I can just go around and start to trace it. And because it's really stuck and tucked into that pad, it's not going to go anywhere. Now, this brain has lots of wrinkles, so I could be here for a very long time doing this, so don't worry, I have already traced out some other images. But what I do is I like to fill in and color in where the black lines are. And so that way I end up with a very stark image. So that's another reason I like to use a very high contrast image. Okay, but anyway, you don't need to see me trace out this whole thing. But you know, it's like I just trace around and then fill in the spaces. Okay, and then if I take it out, you can start to see what it looks like. So anyway, like I said, I'm not going to do that and sit there and bore you, but I've already done that with several, let me get this out of the way, with several images. So I have my images here. I traced a bug, an insect, a beetle. So I had a photocopy of that. I traced a brain, so that same brain image that I had, and then I traced an image of myself, if I can find it. Oh, there it is. And, you know, just put it underneath and traced it. So now I have these different images. So let's say that I want to use the bug. So I just need to cut it out. No big deal, right? Now, I like the tracing paper for two reasons. Number one, it's easy to see through, easy to trace, hence tracing paper. But it's also awesome to glue in as an additional layer in my journal. So let me trim this down a little bit more. So I've got my journal here, and I'll show you, I've already used my face, and you may have seen it as I was flipping through. So this is a tracing, a different image, slightly different selfie of mine. And if maybe you can see the tracing paper, it might be a little difficult. So the tracing paper is great to glue in because it's translucent, and then the glue stick almost makes it transparent. So that's what's really awesome about using the tracing paper. So right now you could probably see the tracing paper, but when you get glue on it, it becomes very translucent. So I might want to find a space where that's going to work out really well. And I like that space because it shows a lot of things, and this page is in the beginning process, so I think having it here would be good, and then I can always work on top of it. So I'm going to take my glue paper, and if you've been tuning in, I've had different glue paper. It was just some scrap. This is an old sketchbook. It's a flimsy kind of thin paper sketchbook, one of the ones I got at one of the conferences that I was at. So I can use it over and over again. Alright, so now when I glue tracing paper, I do have to be really careful. Tracing paper is very, very thin, and it's going to curl up a lot, so I do have to be careful of that. But just like before, I'm going to use my Uhu glue stick. I've got the blue glue stick, so I can cover, and I know I'm going to really cover the entire back. And this is how I know that this glue stick dries totally clear, because I've used it on tracing paper and I've used it on tape transfers, and then you can see how it's wanting to roll up, and that's just because even though the glue stick doesn't have a lot of moisture, the tracing paper is very thin. Okay, and pick it up and stick it down. And I see a little bit of that blue glue, but it's going to dry totally clear. But I mean, you can see how that tracing paper almost completely disappears, and maybe you can't see it, depending on the video. But I think that's just an awesome way of using images, whether they're, you find them in a book, and that's where this came from. This came from a book of copyright-free animals, and so I just photocopied it, and I've used it a lot. But then I can trace it, and now it looks like I have this hand-drawn bug in here, this insect. So again, that's why tracing I feel is like an awesome technique to use in the journal, because you can get this hand-drawn look, and it doesn't take as long, and you don't have to fuss with it like you would if you're trying to draw it from observation. So don't be afraid to trace, and if you're a teacher, encourage your students to trace. Okay, so that's tracing. All right, and you can use any image. I used a black and white photocopy just because it was high contrast. Let me get this out of the way, because now we're going to go into some tape transfers. So you just need some packing tape. Like I like the little rolls just because they're easy and I can transport them. And like I said, you can also use the big one. This is a clearer tape. This is not so clear, but it's not going to matter. They're both going to work. So if I'm going to do a tape transfer, let me see, what do I want to use? All right, so for the tape transfers, I am going to use, let's go ahead and, actually let's use that picture of myself that I cut out earlier. All right, so this is going to work really well with a high contrast black and white photocopy. Okay, it works pretty well with some magazines, but I don't know which magazine. So yeah, some magazines work great, and some magazines just sort of the ink will scratch off whenever you go to remove the paper. So I'm going to trim this, and when I trim it, I'm going to trim it with into a rectangle. And I always start off all of my transfers with a rectangle because the edges of my tape are straight. Okay, some people are like, oh well, I want to cut out around the head, and the problem is then you're going to have sticky tape everywhere, and it just becomes a problem. So if I have it as a rectangle, then I can get the tape stuck down, then trim it to the shape that I want. Okay, so if I take this now, I'm going to move this out of the way. Now some people are like, oh well, you put it down and then you stick the tape down. No, I don't want to do that, because if I do that, let me find my edge here. If I do that, if I go like this, static electricity is going to pick the picture up, and it might not go where I want to. So if I take the tape and I have the sticky side up, and it might be hard to see, but I'm going to pull out the tape, and I don't know if you can see the tape, but it's sticking to my table, to my plexiglass, because of static electricity. Then I take my image and I'm going to put it down and have just a little bit of the tape stick off the side and a little bit of the tape stick off the edge, and then I want to have a little bit of a tail there. So I can just take my scissors and cut that off. So having a little bit of a tail right now is okay, but I want to get rid of that soon. Okay, so now I only covered up about half, actually a little bit less than half. So I'm going to have to use at least 2 pieces of tape. So find the end and do the same thing. Pull it out. Now notice how I leave the tape stuck to the roll. So I don't cut this off, and it makes it a little bit easier. Now I can grab it by the tape, and I want that tape to overlap just a little bit, at least, just a tiny bit. And then I can take and cut off that tail. Okay, so I have a little bit that's not covered, but you know what? That doesn't matter at all. So now I'm going to trim, and I'm going to cut off a little bit of the paper. And that way I don't get that sticky tape residue all over my scissors. So this is when I can cut it to the shape. So if I wanted to cut out around my head, I could do that. But I'm going to just keep it as a rectangle. Okay, and then I can take the sticky tape. I want to get it out of the way. Get it out of the way. Okay. Now I need some water. That's one thing I forgot to mention is water. Before I do the water, I almost forgot. I want to burnish. I want to make sure that the image is really stuck down. So I'm going to take my wooden spoon and really rub the back. The reason I do the back is so I don't scratch up the tape. And I can really press on the back of the paper. So like I said, this works really well with a high contrast black and white image like I have. It works with some magazines, and if you're not sure which magazines, you try it with a magazine. I would suggest do it with a picture that you don't like from that magazine, because if you pull out a picture like, oh, I just love this picture, I want to do it as a image transfer, and it doesn't work, then all of a sudden you've ruined that picture that you really like, and you could have used it as a piece of collage instead of an image transfer. So if you test it first, then you'll make sure that it'll work before you do it with an image that you absolutely love. Okay, now I'm going to flip this over, And I just want to make sure, maybe use my fingernails or use sort of the corner of the spoon, the edge of the spoon. I'm just making sure that I'm pressing along the seam where the tape meets. And now I'm ready to soak it in the water. It could be painty water, doesn't matter. This is clear water, clean water. So I'm just going to put it in there. The question that everyone asks is how long? And the only answer I have is as long as it takes. And with the printer paper, you'll see the paper gets really saturated, gets really dark, and it's doing that now. It's getting pretty dark. With magazines, sometimes the magazine paper's thick or it's glossy, so it's going to take as long as it needs. Warm water tends to work quicker than cold water, but I have cold water in here, and just a matter of a few moments. Now you can see like the back of the paper is kind of gray. And then this is why I have the plexiglass down, because I don't want water all over my board, all over my table. So if I just start to rub, and through some magic, not really magic, but it seems like magic, the toner stays stuck to the tape. Now, if it was a very gray image, so unfortunately sometimes people want to use photos that they've taken, and it's outside and it has green scenery and it's a great color image, but then whenever they make it black and white, it tends to be very gray. That's not going to be so great for a transfer. So it has to have this high contrast, because wherever it's white, that paper is just going to wipe off. Now, if it gets a little hard, I can dip my fingers in the water. And so if it's harder to rub off, if I just get a little bit more water, make sure that paper is staying wet. Now down here in the shirt, the paper is going to be a little bit harder to get off, but if I rub it, it should come off pretty much completely. If it doesn't all come off, that's okay. A little bit more water. Just realize that maybe you can't see it because it's not in the frame. Okay. So I'm just rubbing. You can see how it's becoming totally transparent. So that's the nice thing about this image transfer, is that wherever it's white, the paper comes completely off. Okay. So I want to get all the paper off. Okay. And then I'm going to pick this up, and I see little bits of paper on it. So I'm going to kind of wipe it off. I'm going to clear out a spot. And I'm going to dunk it in the water just to kind of rinse it off. So I'm just dunking the whole thing in the water just to get rid of all the little spots. Now, one thing is I forgot a paper towel or a rag. So what I normally do is I take a paper towel and I lay it down on the table, stick my image with the tape side up, and then I just wipe off the water. Unfortunately, I forgot the rag, so I'll wipe my hands on my jeans. Isn't that what they're for? Okay, and that's just going to dry the image. Now, I do have to be careful because this image is going to be sticky. Okay, so the tape is still sticky where there's no toner. Now, this will not work with those all-in-one machines that most of us have in our houses anymore. Yes, they say it's a photocopier, but it uses inkjet technology, so that ink is water soluble. Okay, so now you can see that image is totally transparent. Okay, let me get the plexiglass out of the way. Okay, now I can turn to my journal. And here's a brain that I've already done. That's a packing tape transfer. And you can see how everything shows through. And you just see, and I cut this around, not right on the edge of the brain, but up near the edge of the brain. So now I can go through and find where I want to put this. Okay, so is it going to live there? Is it going to go on top of the bug? Now, one thing is that this tape is very glossy, and because of that, I can't do anything on top of it. I can try to write on top of it with permanent marker, or I can paint on it with acrylic paint, but it's going to scratch off. So if I were to put this down like over here where there's not a lot going on, I can't do anything else on top of this. So this is really a final layer. So I probably don't want to put it back here where I'm just getting started. But what I find is that a lot of students, a lot of young artists want to take and they'll find a space like here, and they're like, oh, I'm going to glue it down to a blank white paper. And they're like, oh, that looks so cool. And I'm like, well, you just spent 20 minutes taking the white paper off. Why would you want to put it down on blank paper? Okay, so I am going to turn it back. And what's interesting is, let's see if I can find it real quick. Yeah, so I took the same image and I put it in here. So now maybe I want to put this image, you know, maybe it's going to peek through that hole, that window. That's kind of interesting. Okay, maybe it's going to be down here, maybe it's going to be over here. So I like just sort of playing around and finding a space where this might work. Kind of liked it either here, or that was kind of cool too. Maybe I will go ahead and put it there. So now I do want to glue it in. Now you might say, well, it's sticky, and there it's starting to dry out really well. So it's sticky, but down here where the shirt is and where my beard is, it's not sticky. So I still want to use my glue stick. So just like I would with any other collage, put it down, sticky side up, and then just spread glue on it. And this is just going to really make sure it sticks down. And if I want to, I can turn it over, rub it from the back. And I can still see a little bit of that blue glue, but it's going to dry clear. And then, you know, so now I've got myself looking through the hole, which is kind of interesting. And it kind of echoes that one. Okay, so that's packing tape. And like I said, high contrast, black and white, toner based image. Some people have tried it with a color laser printed image, but because color printed images cover the whole paper, it doesn't become see-through, and it's hard to scrub all the paper off the back. And like I said, this becomes a final layer on a page, so I really can't do anything on top of it. I've got to, you know, I want to put it on, and then there's nothing else to go. So yes, I can write on it with permanent marker or with metallic marker, but it's just going to scratch off. Same thing as if I paint acrylic paint on it, it's just going to scratch off. So and then like I said, this does work with some magazines, but test it out first. Okay, so that's a image transfer, the tape transfer. This is quick and easy, inexpensive. All you need is a roll of packing tape. And then now I'm going to show you the solvent transfer. And like I said, I'm going to be using the Chart Pack Add Marker Blender marker. And you can get this, some art stores carry it in their physical location, but I order them through DicBlick. But like I said, this is $3 to $4 for one marker, and it doesn't last very long. And that's why I actually have 4 of them over here, because probably what's going to happen as I start using it, they'll start to dry out. So these have been used before, they're going to dry out. So I'm going to turn back to another photocopied image. So maybe I want to go ahead and go back to my brain, and this time I've got a couple smaller brains, and I had a place where I wanted to use these. Let's see if I can find it. Okay, so with the blender marker, it's going to be, can't remember where it was. Oh, here it was. This is where I wanted to use it. So I think I'm going to do both of these, but I'm going to start off with one just to make sure that I have enough of the solvent. Okay. So what I'm going to do, this is a reversed image. So if you do a word, so with the packing tape, it came out exactly the way it was printed out. With this, I'm going to flip it over and it's going to transfer. So if I have a word, it's going to come out backwards. Okay, so I do want to be aware of that. And I can kind of see the brain through it, so I kind of know where it is. And I have to be careful because this over here, this is photocopied. So this can actually end up transferring onto my other photocopy. So you got to be careful, and also you have to be careful what's underneath. So if you have a laser printed image, whether it's color or black and white, it can transfer. So this works with color laser prints as well. You're not going to get a perfect transfer, but it works with that. Doesn't work so well with magazines because magazines are usually glossy and have something on the back of it. So I turn it over where I want it. I take my pen. Now I will warn you, this is very stinky, and if you're old enough to remember what magic markers are, I remember using them in middle school and in high school, and that's exactly what they smell like. And nice solvent. And like I said, it's a pretty toxic chemical, so that's why I only use it sparingly. And what I want to do is I want to hold the image still, and I'm going to color in, and I already see that this marker is starting to run out. So let me get rid of that marker and grab another one. So if you're going to use the goof off, what I do is I moisten a paper towel or a rag or a cotton ball and then just rub it on the back. And then, you know, that can is full and it lasts a really long time. So I really want to saturate the back of the image and it becomes translucent. And I'm going to take my wooden spoon. So a wooden spoon, a metal spoon, a bone folder. I would not use plastic because xylene melts plastic. It's a acrylic paint remover. And so if you dump it in a styrofoam cup, it's just going to eat right through the cup. It's kind of like nail polish remover, acetone, but it's a little bit different. Acetone isn't as aggressive on the toner, because really the toner is a powdery plastic, I think, because heat's involved. It actually melts. So they use static electricity and heat to create the image. All right, so once I have it rubbed, I can actually see it slid. It moved a little bit. If I pull it up, now I have that image. Okay, so this still has the chemical on it. It's really stinky, so I'm going to set it off on the side, and then I want this image here, and so I would just do the same thing. So you can see it's not a perfect image. It's kind of fuzzy. It looks real grainy, so it doesn't come out perfect. But that's what I like about it, and that's something you have to like understand, that sometimes the tape and the solvent does not come out crisp and clean, but that's part of the fun. Now some people are like, oh well, this still has toner on it, can I go ahead and turn it over and do another one and use the marker again? And then you can, maybe you might get a real faint ghost image, but often what I find is that you get one shot at it. Now I can take this, let all the xylene, all the chemical evaporate off of it and dry, and I can use this with tape, and I can pull the tape transfer and make this into a tape transfer. So I can do that. So anyway, that's the xylene. Again, this is really stinky, so highly recommend opening up a window, doing it outside, or if you're really sensitive to chemicals and chemical smells, don't do this one at all. So the packing tape one works great, and so those are the two image transfers. There are lots of other image transfers out there, but I like these two because with the little roll of tape and with the marker, I can put those in my bag and take them anywhere. And so I can be sitting in a hotel room, or I could do this in a restaurant if I wanted to, or at a coffee shop. Probably wouldn't do the marker out in public just because it's kind of stinky, but the packing tape transfer works. You just need some water, so that's pretty easy to do. So I like how portable they are, so I can take them anywhere with me, and the little roll of tape just goes anywhere. So just very, very easy to take along with me, and that's why I like using them. So not a whole lot of stuff, but anyway, not a whole lot of stuff to kind of worry and take around with me. But yeah, so if you've got questions, leave them in the comments. If you signed on and you didn't say hi and kind of know where you're all joining in from. And please, like the video, and then once it's done, it'll automatically save to Facebook. Share it out with other people. Let other people know, hey, check this out, because like I said, this is the 8th one. And then finally, if you are in a position, I would love any kind of support. You can go on my website, and in the digital shop, in the digital goods shop, you can kind of choose your level of support. So if you want to kick some money my way, awesome, that would be great. If not, I understand, we're all kind of in this weird situation now. But anyway, just really appreciate you tuning in. And like I said, you can always come back and watch this again, and because it's going to be saved on the Facebook page, and you can do that anytime. So if you got any questions, pop them into the comments, and I can get back to you and answer them for you. So thank you so much, and tune in tomorrow night. It's my last scheduled one. I might do more. I have to kind of figure out exactly what else I need to do. So let me see if there's any other questions. All right. So anyway, yeah, thanks so much, and really appreciate you being with me today.